Scientists are investigating whether global warming caused a vast frozen island to break off from the Canadian Arctic. The floating island measures about 16 kilometres and is now just a few hundred kilometres from the North Pole. With all the current fears about climate change, a team of scientists based at the remote settlement of Resolute has travelled to the island, hoping to discover why it broke free from the Ailes ice shelf. Our correspondent David Shookman has been travelling with them.
It sounds odd saying this when I'm standing in a wind chill of -16, but this part of the world is one of the fastest warming anywhere. And it's not just the climate that's changing here, the shape of the coastline is also changing, as I've just found on a journey hundreds of miles to the north. It's always a challenge operating here. The weather can be treacherous, but at last we get the break we need. Our expedition takes us over the rapidly changing landscape of the high Arctic. And where do you think the iceberg is now, the island? We're with two scientists, and our destination is a new island made of ice. This is one edge of it. The smooth area is the island. The rougher surface is ice that freezes and thaws with the seasons. The whole island is too large to show in a single shot. The endless white of solid ice flashes below us. Soon we come into land. Our plane is fitted with skis. It's bumpy, but eventually we slide to a halt. We've landed on a block of ice the size of a city. For 3,000 years it was attached to the coast, miles from where it's now drifting. It's a very strange feeling walking on an island that's floating. This is the largest piece of ice adrift in the Arctic Ocean, and when it broke away from the coast, that was seen as the most dramatic single event in this rapidly warming region. Now obviously no one was here at the time to see it happen, but our graphics designers have recreated that moment. A giant fissure 10 miles long ripped open in less than an hour with the force of a small earthquake. The maps of the Arctic need to be redrawn. It's hard to grasp the scale of this, but picture the Houses of Parliament at one end of the island. Because it's 10 miles long and 3 wide, much of central London could fit on it. Now, for the first time, scientists are able to investigate. Here they use radar to see how thick the ice is, the equivalent of a 10-story building.
Well, we want to know whether this event was aided by climate change.
I mean, that seems to be likely given the rate of warming in the Arctic.
That's one thing, and the other thing is that this event is consistent with other events that we see, other trends in the Arctic, like the reduction in sea ice extent, the warming of the permafrost, and melting glaciers.
Most of the island is rock solid, but eventually it will break up, probably along fault lines like this, where at some stage the ice cracked open and then was forced together again, throwing up these huge blocks of ice, a process that'll happen all the faster as the Arctic gets warmer. The melting could take years. In the meantime, the island could drift to Alaska and threaten the oil rigs at sea.
For the ships, they can move out the way, but the big issue with oil rigs is that they can't move. And an ice island this size, there's really no way that we can tow it out the way. We can't blow it up, it's too large. And so it is really a big potential issue.
We take off along the tracks the skis made when we landed. And we get a last view of this new feature of the Arctic. Left behind is a satellite tracking beacon, a lonely passenger on this island on the move. Now there are 5 more great shelves of ice still attached to the coast in this part of the Canadian Arctic. If the warming continues as predicted, we can expect them to break away and form enormous ice islands like the one that I've just been to. What most surprises scientists here is the rate of change underway here in the Arctic.
David, there's been warming in the past, and sometimes the ice shelves have then reformed. Do scientists think that could happen again now, that these shelves could reconstitute themselves?
Every indication is that there's no way the shelves can reform. There's been an acceleration in the rate of warming. Clearly, if you look back over past records, the climate has warmed and cooled in this part of the world, as in many other parts of the world, and the ice has shown that story all too clearly. But what seems to be happening now is a combination of different events. You've got the retreat of the sea ice. That's the sea that freezes in the winter months. You've got the retreat of the great glaciers in the mountains behind me. And on top of that, the cracking of these ice shelves. So the impression the scientists get up by a range of data from satellites and field research is that what's happening now is unprecedented and at unprecedented speed.